Tēnā tātou e te whānau, e mihi tonu nei ki a tātou, kua tai tēnei ata, tātou kua tatū mai nei ki tā tātou kaupapa, o te rā e tangi tonu nei ki o tātou mate, kei wainganui i a tātou, whāriki hianga mate, kia tangi hia, kia poroporo aki ti a rātou katoa. Tātou e whakakanohi mai nei i a rātou, nau mai, hara mai, whakatau mai rā. Ko waio, ko Niki Pene Tito Hemara tōku ingoa, he uri a hau no Ngāti Ranginui, Ngāti Kahungunu, te whakatohia me Ngāti Porou. Who am I? I'm a tākaro practitioner, I'm a kaupapa Māori researcher, a bit of a strategist, I think, a teacher, born and bred in South Auckland, so I'm proud of my roots in Manurewa. I'm a disruptor of systems that don't work for Māori. But I also have a bit of a whakapapa back to Ruatoria Ngāti Porou, so I guess he tiwai waka ahau nā Māui. And lastly, like most of you, I'm a mokopuna, I'm a daughter, I'm an auntie, I'm a niece, and most importantly, I'm a wife and a mother to 4 tamariki, ranging in age from 5 all the way to 20. And my whānau is definitely my whole world. What is up, e te whānau? Nau mai, hara mai. Welcome to our 4th and final tākaro webinar in a series of 4 for this year. But also, ko te wiki tākaro tēnei, so it's Play Week this week, so a huge mihi to those of you who have been following Toi Tangata socials and been liking and sharing all our content and been doing your own things. And please, e te whānau, if you're doing some cool stuff out there, tag us in it so we can share you on our socials as well. So I thought we would kick off this webinar by taking a little bit of a look back from, where we kind of started our journey with our webinars. I can't even remember what the month was, maybe May, with Hawaii Kura leading into today. So I'll bring up a bit of a slide deck. Hold on, give me a second. Where are we? This one. Share. Oh gosh, this is hard to roll it at the same time. And make it bigger. Cool. So, when was that? See, May. So we kicked things off with Hawaii Kura, Kylie and Mare Kura Nepia dropped whakaro on whānau transformation through taonga tukuiho. They shared the impact of Hawaii Kura on whānau well-being and how community plays a massive role in building connections that lead to true transformation. Honestly, after this, I think Mare went into do manu kōrero and won. That girl has some potential, man. So watch the space. Then we were joined by our good friend, Dr. Hariata Tairakina, who recently graduated with her doctorate over in the States. And she shared her doctoral research on Indigenous joy, drawn from a land-based cultural immersion camp for rangatahi with the Ojibwe people in northern Minnesota in the US. Her kōrero explored how integrating joy into health and educational programs can make a meaningful impact and discussed what that might look like from a te ao Māori perspective. So that was our second one. Then we invited the Oi sisters to the online teapu. We had Rangi Marie and we had Crystal and myself having a deep dive, good kōrero into the lived realities of wahine Māori in the world of tākaro. Together they shone a light on wahine who create and hold and protect space for others to thrive through play, but kind of kept it really raw and real about the sacrifices and challenges and the hāpai kimuri mahi, the invisible mahi that often comes with that role when wahine are enablers of tākaro. And that leads us to today. But before I give a bit of an overview of our webinar and introduce our wicked kai kōrero for today, the chat is open for general comments and there's some whanaungatanga popping off in there at the moment. So please, me haere tonu. And then you know that the question and answer forum or platform feature is for our pātai, for the kai kōrero. And we're keen, e te whānau, if you've got pātai, please pātai mai. So today our webinar, dives deep into Takaro on the Fringes. And I already know that Wiremu is going to challenge me on that kind of title, Takaro on the Fringes. Fringes as of whose fringes? Not my fringes. So let's just wait for that kōrero to pop off. From drag to dress up to our very own Māori circus school, our kai kōrero will explore what it means to bring Te Whare Tapere to life in all its colours, beyond the usual taonga, tākaro, kapa, haka theatre and taonga pūoro, celebrating the full spectrum of play, creativity, movement and performance that's always thrived in Māori spaces. So breaking stereotypes, opening doors and challenging what tākaro as a universal language truly looks like today. So without further ado, it's my privilege to introduce you to our kai kōrero for today. I'm going to ask them to chuck their cameras on and I might just stop sharing so we can see their beautiful faces. Here they are, here they are. First up, meet the one and only Wiremu David Edwards Chappie no Ngāti Porou, Ngāti Kahungunu ki Wairoa, Ngai tā Manuhiri, he kaiarahi ia ki Te Hou Ora Whānau Services. Kei hea, hue. Oh, okay, good night. A diva in some lights, a pōtiki in others, Wiremu lives where the unexpected meets the everyday. Based in Otapoti, his whare pulses with kapa haka, kani, kori kōrero, tui kākahu, panoni, kanohi, whakarake, makawe, and so much more. He's the mokopuna turned matua, rekindling his love for the life force of Te Whare Tapere and Toi Whakari. He weaves worlds together, creating a landing ground where everyone inside and beyond his stratosphere can gather, connect, and let their songs rip. Welcome, no mai haramai, Wiremu. And before we go to you, I'm going to also be super honoured to introduce Natasha Van Eden no Ngai Te Rangi ia, he kai whakahaere matua ia ki te Kura Maninirau, a storyteller, a creative powerhouse based in Tāmaki Makaurau. Sorry, we're here. That's why we're wearing the same colours. She's on a mission to open the arts and performing arts to people of all ages, backgrounds and histories, uniting whānau through play, movement and shared experience. Currently balancing full-time study, I know the no. Currently balancing full-time study with her role as a kai whakahaere kura of Aotearoa's first e te whānau, Kura kaupapa Māori circus school, Te Kura Maninirau. In her mahi, Natasha sparks a love for all things within the Whare Tapere, whether soaring in aerial movement under rangi nui or grounding on papatua nuku's whenua. Her world is alive with creativity, connection and joy. No mai, hara mai, aku tino hoa. I'm just going to hand it over to you first, Wiremu. You want to just give us a little bit of a whakawhānui here of who you are, ko waikoe, and your organisation.
Of course, tēnā koe, Nikki. Wow, what an introduction. I don't know how to follow that up. Yes, snaps. So, ko waio, yes, as you all heard, no te tairawhiti whānui, Ngāti Porou, Ngāti Kahungunu, Ngai tā Manuhiri. However, just to throw a spanner in the works, I was born and raised in Murihaku, so in the deep south, where we see icebergs on the beach. And what is my kind of like role? Well, first of all, I do work at Te Hou Ora Centred Services, which is a whānau service centre here in Otapoti, based in Dunedin. However, I do need to go back to my most important role, which is glamorous headache. So I like to, you're a disruptor, Nikki. I like to think I leave people with headaches, but in a glamorous way. And that's like a little tip of the iceberg of ko waio. And I'm sure there's going to be plenty of opportunity for everyone who's got their are taringa out and about to kind of like get to know me more.
Love that. Ka whio te rākau kia koe, Natasha.
Kia ora, aho mā wiwi au te rānei, engari kei te pai. Kia ora koutou, he uri tēnei no nai te rangi, ko ngai tūkarangi, ko Ngāti Kuku o Hapu. As Nikki said, and as Wiremu already expressed, it's going to be hard to follow those intros, Nikki, because they were spot on. I'm the kai whakahaere kura of Te Kura Maninirau here in Tāmaki Makaurau. And as Nikki said, I'm also juggling full-time study. But yeah, I will just quickly plug in our organisations there because that's a good time to do it. So Te Kura Maninirau started as a joint collaborative kaupapa from Te Pou Theatre and the Dust Palace here in Tāmaki. So Te Pou Theatre being the main Māori theatre place, whare home of Māori theatre here in Tāmaki Makaurau, and Te Rapea ko te motu, and the Dust Palace being one of the leading schools and active performing companies for circus here in Tāmaki Makaurau and across the motu as well, and internationally for both of these companies. And it came about when the Tainui Tuki Waho and Eve Gordon were creating Te Tangi Atatui, saying where are our kaupapa Māori, our tangata Māori who can perform in circus arts and have these skills to bring to the ao. And I'll get into more of that later, but kia ora.
Awesome, e te whānau. And so you can see we kind of did a little bit of coordinating, Natasha and I, we've got the same colour on. I wasn't feeling my fit, so Piata came past with these glasses and I was like, can I wear them for my webinar? And then of course, Wiremu comes with all the fire and flair. So awesome to have you guys with us. I think, so funny little backstory. So Wiremu and Te Whānau Hou Ora Services is part of the Kahui Takaro, or our Takaro workforce collective within Sport New Zealand. So I met him for the first time maybe midway through the year. And so he comes to this wānanga i te whānau and he's just like, so Takaro in this context isn't kind of really my jam. And then I was like, what is it then? And he goes, drag and dress up and like makeup and rota rota. And I was just like, oh my gosh. Like this is an untouched space, I feel, where some of the people across our sector kind of don't necessarily value it in the way in which you value it, and I just want to be part of it. So that kind of was the beginning stages of that kōrero. And then I've also been stalking Natasha's Kura Maninirau for a while now, and then had an opportunity to invite her to this kaupapa that we were running in Tāmaki. And then I got her down and then we were listening to all of the, she did this 9-minute pitch around this is what Te Kura Maninirau was, and I fell in love with it. And so I said to her, hey, so you reckon you could come on a webinar with me? And then she goes, oh, when? And I said, oh, play week. And she goes, oh, that's actually whakapuaki, like my last whakapuaki for Te Wānanga o Takiura, and I did Takiura last year. And so she said to me, yes, and we just like put it in the date so I can work around it? I'm like, yay, yes. And so that's what we've got today, Te Whānau. Drag, dress up, colour, the Māori circus school and everything in between. So let's kick off with a really loaded, massive first question, just to, you know, make you so nervous. And we're coming to you first. Traditionally, Whare Tapere were spaces for storytelling, play, movement, and cultural expression. How have these spaces, in your mind, evolved into contemporary Aotearoa? And what role can Takaro play in keeping their legacy alive? Yeah, that's kind of the first partai, massive partai, but go wherever you want to go with that.
Okay, you got me biting my nails. I thought I like had, you know, thought about it enough. But as soon as you read it out, I was like, oh, le tokiri. Well, I'm actually going to quote this handsome tāne. I think his name's Dario. He said something on one of Toi Tangata's most recent posts about Takaro is where our whānau are. And wherever our whānau is, that's where Takaro will activate. And I think one of the things about Takaro is the people always were, right? Whether Takatāpui, whether the majority. But I believe socially we have shifted. So both the tangata and both Whare Tapere will always exist or coincide regardless of traditional or contemporary. But talking about that shift, Takaro supporting its life force and the demonstration of like not thinking about it, if that makes any sense to anyone, but the role of Takaro plays in keeping legacy alive is a response to today's whānau and community, yes, and the needs, but like there also needs to be whānau and community responding to Takaro, if that also makes sense. And so either contemporary or traditional, but the thing that like kind of like makes me think is like, are the berries delicious to the manu? You know, like, so our contemporary berries delicious to my nanny and koro, who passed down the information that I have regarding Whare Tapere. And in the same way, are we still eating traditional berries? And I think the most important thing here is are our manu consuming the berries? And if they're not, I think we need to be at peace with that and let them find those berries. And I think that that's how keeping the legacy alive will occur naturally, as opposed to kind of like forcing this A4-page example of how tākaro can work. So I always, especially when thinking about kaupapa kōrero like this, I think it was in one of Macy Rika's songs, he o mana pau, he o mana tawa, right? That kind of knowledge bombing. And I believe that rerenga kōrero is rooted in the idea of there is a pipi whāraurua, a kēreru, and a kākapo, none of which are going to share the same substance, right? Each has its own berry. In order to be able to eat the berries, gain the nutrients and the strength to fly within the canopies of our ngahere, to be able to land on branches, to shit out those seeds that from the berry that they've just eaten, to spread it to more birds like them. I think that that's how we will now kind of respond to keeping legacies alive, is just letting they, them, he or she engage with what berries is delicious on their tongue. But if we are forcing kai down the pipes of our manu, then it's going to choke them out. And that ultimately leads to tākaro not being engaged with at any level, either contemporary or traditional.
I've got a follow-up. I've got a follow-up question. What are the berries that that are sustaining you?
Yeah, diverse. So we have, as you mentioned in the rich introduction, I am fortunate enough to live in a whare with a chosen whānau. So of course I've got my biological whānau who I live, laugh, love, but I've expertly procured a community of my own that is centered in kapa haka, kani, kori kōrero, if you will. And what this looks like is kind of, in the world of kapa haka and whakangaho, it's like we're not taking it seriously, right? But we take our whakangaho very serious.
Right. Let's go.
These are the whakaharato before we end up on the matatini stage, ne?
Yeah.
And so again, if we're even touching on the example of tākaro in education, sorry to jump the waka, but that kind of like space of kapa haka and whakangaho allows for that like little kōtiti, that little tākaro, that little whā with the rauemi, for it to be the educational, or for it to be the lesson to be of a stepping stone towards te matatini stage. Not all of us have always been strong with tūpoi, right? We've always had to work out that left hand, and where do we do it? In whakangaho. And so that's where like what that kind of looks like. And if I need to dabble again in another example, I'm going to touch on kōrero, because I think that this is a really random one for the audience, for the whānau. So in Te Ao Takatāpui, in the world of drag, sometimes drag queens can be looked at as being quite mean and quite vicious with one another. And that can like exist and be seen in the world of kōrero. So we have this thing in my whare called Te Whare Pukapuka, which basically means the library is open. And what do you do in libraries? You read pukapuka, right? But our peers in that moment are the pukapuka. And what we're basically doing is strengthening each other, because reading is what? Fundamental. We kind of clock, and clock means like recognizing areas of improvement, right? Because when we clock each other, it's done in a real fun way, in a really like mana enhancing way. But what that is doing is kind of strengthening each other, so that when we do face the world outside of our whare, we're strong in our own, and like we've kind of like strengthened the foundation of the drag queen so that no one can shake it. that doesn't look like tākaro to the majority. It looks like bullying. However,
Yeah,
within the
right.
whare,
Roasting.
yeah. And like what that basically does is just lets each other know that you've got spinach on your teeth, girl. Do something about it. And that again can look pretty abrasive, but within the whare, it's actually strengthening and supporting the overall fantasy and vision. Um, and even if you want to touch on the example of tui tui kākahu, right? I personally don't buy anything brand new. Everything that you see on me today is from the op shops, from the salvos, from the hospice store. And that's because I believe upcycling kākahu is where we're going to have to go in the future. Just around things like sustainability and fast fashion disposal as well, kind of hurting our taiao. Because again, quoting Toi Tangata, if we are participating in te pā taiao, what are we doing in te pā hangarau to like sustain that taiao? And so tui tui kākahu is a world that some people are enamored with and enjoy and find happiness in. But again, it's not for everyone. It could be the fringes to some.
Yeah, could be the Fringes. Let's get back to that. But before we do, I'm going to head over to you, Natasha. If I think about some of Charles Royal's mahi and how he took us, he helped us imagine what the Whare Tapere of old looked like with karetau, with kapa haka, with taonga tākaro, mahi a te rehia. There was no kind of explicit reference to the circus. So, but there's a hononga there. So can you talk us through that, e hoa?
Hi. I kind of see tākaro as a bridge. I mean, tākaro as an essence is about rehia. It's ngā mahi o te rehia. So it's about the joy that tākaro brings to those involved and those observing. And for me, same with Wiremu, like my mahi isn't on the fringe. For me, it's the centre of my ao at the moment. So I can see the joy and the rehia, and I listen to the katakata of ngā tamariki who come to our classes every week. And it's that play and that curiosity that kind of has led us to join tākaro into mahi o te maninirau of circus work as well. Because circus work, for example, is about storytelling, it's about exploration. So within that, I mean, as Māori, we are naturally storytellers. I mean, look at our kapa haka, look at our waisa, look at our mōtiatia. There is pūrako within everything and every essence of everything that we do and have put forth. And so that for us is another way that we can bring tākaro and pūrako and this mātauranga into the world of circus. And it kind of brings us together and kind of strengthens our collective hou ora and our collective resilience as Māori to hold fast to these taonga, to ngā taonga tuku iho, to this mātauranga, and to bring it forwards into a contemporary perspective. Yeah, so from that, I guess what I'm trying to say is that although it's an evolving form, and for many they might see circus as a very Western form, and matter of fact, there is a lot of indigenous whakapapa, not just to Aotearoa, but to other communities like Mongolia, Mexico, China, Japan, within circus. So in its essence, circus is an indigenous exploration of play. And so from there, I think, coming back to Aotearoa and to our whakapapa as Māori, I mean, and there's lots of pūrako and lots of kōrero, well, not lots, but some kōrero around within Te Whare Tapere. There's stilt walking, so pūrako. There's the moari, which is, for those of you who don't know, is a big swing, sometimes next to an awa, sometimes just within the middle of ngāhere. You will swing around it, tamariki will jump into the awa. There's other tikanga around that as well that I'm still exploring because of a lot of our kōrero was lost, just in the joys of colonization. But other than that, to get back to the essence of it, the heart of tākaro and the heart of maninirau is rehia, is joy, is exploration, is this constant cultivation of something new and something at the edge of where we see play. And I think as Māori, we've always done that with tākaro and how it's explored and as it's developed over the years.
So can you, for those of us who the circus is lions and monkeys and the guy that whips. Like, what does it look like for us in Aotearoa? Can you give us a glimpse?
I can share some photos as well. Let's see.
Oh, yay,
I
yay.
forgot to test this when we were testing, but let's make it work.
Oh, we forgot about it. Sorry.
Make it bigger.
Natasha has started screen sharing. Cool. We're nearly there, I think. Don't click to enter full screen mode. Yay, there you are.
Hi.
Oh,
Awesome.
beautiful.
I know Ētahi o ngā Pakitia, so we hold whānau day, like where we try and bring the community together. So we've got our tamariki, we've got our Pākeke, we've got our kuia kaumātua coming through to just explore play together. And I think at the heart of it, that's what Takaro is. And at the heart of Te Whare Tapere, it's about bringing community together to experience joy, to experience something new. And so this is what we try to do through some of our mahi. So these are just a few pikitia that I've chosen. And some of them are a bit more, I guess you could say, staged than others. But you can see the joy on the faces of our tamariki here. And that's essentially what we're trying to do to bring forwards into this, because it is a new art form for us, around trying to combine Te Māori and Te Maninirau together. And so there have been challenges in how we can do this while still ensuring that we are trying to whakanui te mana o te ao Māori whilst trying to whakanui te mana o te ao Maninirau hoki. And it has presented its challenges because people do still see Maninirau circus as this, here's a tent, here's your animals, here's the ringmaster going around. So trying to move away from that and move the contemporary perspective of circus away from that has been rather difficult. But there is, the essence of it is the joy, it is the play, it is the kata o ngā tamariki that comes through our whare each week. It's the exploration of something new. And from that as well, we had a show, well, Te Pau Theatre and the Dust Palace had a show that most of our kāko were in, called Te Tangi Te Tsui, which has just finished its North Island tour. And this is the first ever Cirque Māori full te reo Māori for this show. It premiered over in Vancouver 2 years ago, premiered in Aotearoa and Tāmaki here at the Auckland Arts Festival last year, and then thankfully had another tour around the North Island this year. And hopefully we've got some more seasons coming up, but I can't share those just yet. Just keep an eye on the Facebook pages. But trying to combine these two worlds together was so much easier than we thought, because there's such a connection between them, between the pūrākau that we have throughout from our taonga tukuiho, from our kaumātua, from our tūpuna, and then we're such physical storytellers as well, as people can see in Sydney, as people can see just across the world, and our whakari that multiple people put on each year through Te Pau Theatre's work, through whakari like Ahikaroa, like we tell stories with our tinana. And that's, I think, been the biggest connection for us, to be able to make this work combine with Te Māori and Te Maninirau.
I'm so excited for our future, because I was lucky enough to go to Te Tangi Te Tsui and have recently just come back a couple of weeks ago from Te Whare Tapere o Te Arawa's whetūrangi here. Man, ko ngā rawa, like just from the casting to the rota, to the very Māori jokes that were in there, to our rangatahi leading in Tangi Te Tui, the apparatus and how you move around it, like unreal. And so if you were ever a skeptic around whether this was Takaro or whether it was movement at its finest, please chuck that out the door, because it totally is. Awesome. So I want to get to probably where I was thinking in relation to the Fringes part of the title of this webinar, but I absolutely accept that. No, this is our norm, actually, and you fellas are on the Fringes, you and your tonga tākaro over there, no. If I think about drag, I'm coming to you, Wiremu. If I think about drag and dress up, when we were talking, in our lead up, you were talking about this, that people often go a little bit haitaki on you. Can you expand on what you mean by that?
There's so many ways I can go with this, so please redirect me. Please
Okay.
stop me if I go a little bit frilly with my kōrero. So basically, the fringes or like trivial forms of play, basically when, like, so those forms are like my first language, reo matua, if you will. But some can see drag and theatre as being something not of their flavor, so not the berry of choice.
Yeah.
And in doing so, with Takatāpui, that kind of has been politicized. And so when something is political and or a bit of a statement, that is what like leads the majority to kind of heitiki kakariki towards me. However, I don't think it's ever out of like hara. It's more just kind of like a lot of the times it's curiosity, but of course sometimes we can like lean into performances that are religion based or are directly political, especially in today's current climate with our current government. Some of our performers here in Otepoti really like lean into kind of aroha mai for my language whānau, but pissing people off. Like we intentionally are looking to tick people off, so that way we can, I guess, provoke thought. One of the things that I do want to like touch on is like permission culturally. So basically I am a tāne. I have connection to my taha wahine and my taha tāne. But culturally, sometimes when working with, so recently, and I wish I had high quality image files to share with everyone, but I'll just post some Instagram links for everyone to go do some rangako and have a wee nuhi themselves. But recently we did some work around performing as hine nui te pō. And so biological tāne were draped in kauai that were gifted to us by our cousins or our auntie. So we basically like templated their kauai. But that still kind of had our Māori Takatāpui community thinking, can we do that? And that's all that we're trying to do, is to provoke curiosity. So that way, like, we can start asking those questions instead of tiptoeing in the shadows, because that's when I believe the not segregation, but like as tauira of te ao Māori, we kind of like become isolated in our thinking. And so if we are just like basically, how do I explain it? Sometimes we follow our gut and we see what happens. Other times we go against what our gut says and see what happens. And I think that that's like a pretty big, you know, Maui tiki tiki a taranga behavior, if you will. You know, that's how we like felt out in the dark, is by having a tutu with our tohu. Do we listen to them? Let's see what happens. And if we don't, let's see what happens. Maybe something great would come out of it. And that's what I like believe an example of like hey tiki kakariki can look like. But I'm actually going to shout out my own Instagram, which is Wiramumu on Instagram, because I recently was actually in a boxing match, whānau, you know, so I was a part of my Fringes recently. I had my hand raised, not to worry, whānau, of course, only victory in this house. And basically, me participating in a majority sector still had people looking at me in heitiki. And so basically, I exist in an echo chamber of living within taha wahine. And so when I tapped into my taha tāne, the thing that people wanted me to do, they still looked at it a little bit sideways. So, and I don't think it was definitely a judgment thing, but more of like, wow, I'm curious about this feminine tāne participating in our arena. And what came from that, and this isn't a takahi, but it's more of like an acknowledgement of two worlds. Some of the fighters mentioned that they are really proud of me and inspired by this artwork for stepping into a boxing ring, because a boxer, they don't believe that they could step into a drag stage. And I think that that's what is kind of like the beautiful marriage of tilting your head in curiosity as opposed to judgment. Because when I was playing with the idea of stepping into a corporate boxing match, it was like, I think I could do that, as opposed to what the heck is that? And I think that that's what I would love to like leave with some people to think about, is just like, how would that work for you? So instead of just like, that's not for me, how could it like improve or like make you laugh a little bit? Because I certainly didn't rule out boxing, a role or a world dominated by tahatane, as something that like wouldn't improve me, but instead it definitely gave me some lessons, especially around Hou Ora. So if you want to talk about Takaro, I would never play basketball, but that is still something that I would like toy with and have a tutu with. And so like my world, I encourage people to have a tutu. See what thoughts are provoked.
Hard out. Don't rule me out of nothing. You might see me, mate. I love that. Awesome. Okay, let's switch. I'm gonna come back to you, Wiremu, and I'll just preface this by saying insights into some of our tamariki rangatahi who are forming their ideas about who they are, and some insight into that. But I'm gonna head over to Natasha first. Natasha, I was thinking about, so you totally had me imagining when we were catching up around the way you framed some of the movements around te ao ranginui, te ao papa tuanaku. Can you talk us through maybe how you are bridging the te reo Māori aspects into what some may consider a Western ideal, I guess, or institution?
Right, so at the start of this kaupapa, we had a wānanga, those from Te Pau, from the Dust Palace, and our kaiako came through, and we looked at creating a pedagogy that will help bridge these questions, because obviously there is a lot of raru, not raru, but places that clash potentially in the eyes of some. And so we came up, Eve and Tainui came up with te ao ranginui, te ao papa tuanuku, as the homes of the mahi that works in the air and the homes of the mahi that works on the ground. In the air we have our rigs, which you might have seen in some of the pictures. So we have a silk and a porofita, which is the lera, and we're still working, continuing to wānanga around how we can still bring more mātauranga into these and potentially pass off this mātauranga to the tamariki, to anyone that we engage with. So for example, we try and bring in pūrako from Te Paiao. So we have one specific example where we talk about rona, and rona living in the marama. In our porofita, in the lera, we go through the pūrako with the tamariki, we teach them the waiata, and then we start to show them how rona gets taken into te marama, and how they can put that through into our tinana and show us all that through their tinana within this porofita, through specific placements of their body, through pathways that go round and round. And then within te ao papa tuanuku, there's kind of this reliance on papa tuanuku to provide support and care for us as we're doing our mahi there. And so that is kind of the realm of porofi makamaka, so juggling, throwing objects, and also of our acrobatics, partner acrobatics. And so within all of this, there's a lot of give and take between the person and the thing that they're working with, whether it be another object or whether it be with another person. And so we're kind of looking at how this relates to papa tuanuku, and how we're constantly caressing her as we walk across her, as we lie on her, as we move through and on top of her with another person, with another thing, and how this relates to our physical stability, and how this, not just physically, but also within our hinengaro as well, to try and create balance. I think we're always coming back to this point of balance within ourselves, balance within the thing that we're working with, not just in te ao papatūānuku, but te ao rangi nui hoki. And there's a lot of respect there that comes from framing it in this way, because we're constantly realizing that the world is bigger than just us. The world is bigger than just the thing we're working with. And it's giving a lot of mana back to the space that we're working with. And when some of our tamariki start to climb really high up into that air, we constantly bring it back. We're like, whose realm are you in? You're in te ao rangi nui now. So if you don't respect the thing that you're doing, if you don't respect the mahi that you're doing, there is risk, there is danger that could potentially come from that. And it just provides that context for them to understand the world is bigger than them. And obviously the play is learning. And so through this, we're able to bring this learning, this mātauranga through this play that we're sharing with them.
I love that. I'm going to stay with you because I have a really curious question. So we've got 100 kg Nikki, who is a retired netballer, was okay once back in the day, has a lingering Achilles injury. Her mobility is not that great, but I want to be able to do some mahi up in te ao o rangi nui. Maybe look like Pink at her concerts, I don't know. So what does delivery look like for a Nikki versus, you know, my 5-year-old Koyanaki whose mobility is great, who's got a squad of doom, but is still learning some fundamental movement skills. Yeah, how do you move through those needs as a practitioner?
Yeah. There's a lot of apprehension when we're teaching pakeke, or anyone who's a little bit older potentially. Even a lot of apprehension sometimes in our tamariki as well. And I think that's where tākaro comes back in, and framing it, that learning it is play. And that's where we're able to bridge that gap between what we're doing with either a tamariki or a pakeke or etahi atu. And so by framing it, it's just like, just try, see what happens, kind of going back to Wiremu's conversation. Like, yeah, like you're not viewing it as like, oh, I don't want to do that, or that's going to be too difficult. You're like, oh, what's going to happen? Like, is this going to happen? Is that going to happen? Let's just sit and see, sit with the uncomfortableness and find out what's going to happen. And for pakeke, sometimes that does take a little bit longer, but that's where play and joy brings it back to the heart of what we're doing. As long as there is joy in what we're doing, as long as there's re here in the mahi, then there is still the want and the need to explore. And so that's where it's similar. And obviously with our tamariki, they're a little bit more tutuish. They'll just get up and then fall off and then get up and fall off again. That's just who they are. We're a little bit more apprehensive. We're a little bit careful of our tinana, and that's okay. So potentially the kōrero there is whatever feels comfortable to you. And that's always it's the safety of the tinana, the safety of the self, that is always at the centre of the mahi when we're teaching. Well, the tamariki also, but they just goes in one ear out the other, and they're like, cool, I'm up and then I'm down, and then up and then I'm down. And so centering the play as learning is the thing that brings it all together and makes it more accessible for us all.
I love that. So again, I've recently gone and done a wānanga with Dr. Hirangi Heke down in Takaro, where we were looking into all the whakapapa of snow. Anyways, we went snowboarding, and my ego got the better of me. I kind of mastered the snowboarding thing on the little baby hill, and then I couldn't get up the bloody chairlift. So it had one of these chairlifts, so you got to it's got this little flying fox thing, you got to hold on to it, and I fell off. I swear you not, like 50 times. And, you know, pakaru manua as. And so I think, but like, what did that teach me? You know, resilience. What did it made me riku pretty deep. I was really thankful that I had these little goggles on, because there were tears under there at some point when the little 3-year-old went up past me, you know. And so I think about things like, you know, Te Kura Maninirau, and actually how in some instances it balances the playing field for matua or pakeke and tamariki, and brings them closer together. So the opportunity for intergenerational knowledge share is even cooler, actually. She's the teacher, I'm the learner.
Right, and that's something we try to hone in on as well within our akumanga, within our classes, And so at the end of each wahanga, end of each term, we try to bring the pakeke and the kaumātua into it now, and their taina. And so at the end of each wahanga, the tamariki become the kaiako, and they get to teach their mātua, their whānau whānui, the skills that they've been learning. And honestly, that's the highlight of my, however many months that is, every time, because the joy that you see and that intergenerational play that comes together from that, and the Pākeke being like, no, I could never do that, but because it's their tamariki trying to encourage them and bring them into it, it just switches something on, and then like, yes, we're going to do it together. And that's just that, it's a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah, awesome. I just read you guys have got a beautiful mihi in there. I'll leave that one there. You guys can have a little read. But Wiremu, I'm going to come back to you in relation to any, I don't know, any advice that you have for those of us who, or for those tamariki who are thinking about the ira tane, ira wahine, and the relationship that they may or may not have to some of the less popular, I don't know if that's great language either, less popular tākaro opportunities out there.
So I'm just going to start off like with a little bit of whakapapa. So as I was growing, there was no such thing as an old gay, right? And that was because we were coming out. I was born in the 90s, even though I look so spryly and youthful. I was born in the 90s, and by the time I came around, there were the residuals of like AIDS in Aotearoa. And so there was a whole generation of kaiako, of teachers, of performers, of storytellers that weren't around when I was a tamaiti. And so effectively what's happening now is that now that we've advanced in medication and social standings and whatnot, people like myself, and in no way is this a comparison, but we have pere wihongi, you know, we have tangaroa Paul, we have Blimmin Tuhoi, you know, we were out here, like we are representatives of some of our taiohi who are, I guess, playing with a few more colors in their crayon box, if you will. And so basically, we're not going out here, and I'm just touching on a kaupapa because sometimes rhetoric can force some to believe that we're out here bleeding onto our tamariki and our taiohi, confusing them, if you will. But instead, what we are acting as is in real-time representation for them. And that's all I believe that I can simply be, is letting them know that this avenue, this alternative route, if you will, is a pathway that has been forged and does exist. And we don't just have the left and the right lane anymore. Hai kare, darling, you can bugger off over there for all I care. But the fact that we now have those who are walking those paths, I think that that's the tohu for our hunga taiohi, for our hunga rangatahi, to be able to dabble in that crayon box, as we had far and few in between. Like, for example, historically, gay icons were actually straight women. So I could use examples of like Kylie Minogue, Madonna, Cher, but now we do have tinana Takatāpui in places and representing these bodies and minds. And so I think that that is totally the fuel in the tank of our tamariki and our rangatahi. We're not forcing anything in a direction, but they have multiple directions to choose from now. And I think at its core, again, playing on the fringes, if you will, it is just that mahi arehia. It is just offering those options of berries for them to have a wee kai on, you know. And now that they know that it is there, I think that that's the waka that a lot of our hunga taiohi are in now. And also, just to shout out to the allyship as well. So those who aren't even Takatāpui, being able to acknowledge their peer, you know, that's also something that I think the representation can like leave off, is for because these kids are so much cooler than I ever was. And so like to see our babies come through now and just like be able to understand someone's a little bit different, there's space for you. That's something that in the early 2000s, girl, I couldn't even get away with having painted nails. And so like now that our hunga taiohi are like cool like that, they're happy to like ask the questions without it being a dagger. And I think that that's all is needed is for space to be held for those bodies and minds. And then same with those bodies and minds holding space for pātai. Because, and this is maybe a little bit loaded, but I'm going to use like gayness, like using gay and lesbian and transhood as examples. But at a time when people would come out as gay, lesbian, or trans as performers as well, we didn't really hold space for our whānau to come out as whānau of gay, lesbian, and trans performers as well. And so like there's that kind of conversation around like allowing space for our loved ones to to ask those questions, to make mistakes and to learn from them as well. Because I don't think I would have a family as supportive as I do if they didn't ask the wrong questions at some time. But at the end of the day, it's always kua korowaitia I te aroha. It's just them trying to find their understanding. And now that there's more avenues for our rangatahi, there's more options for them to pick from to be able to then take back to their whānau or their ecosystems, however they please. So that way they can let them understand the jus, you know?
Love, 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 love. We're coming to, I think we're about 7 minutes out at the moment. I think I'm going to let you guys think about one last sound bite that you're going to leave our whānau with. But things that I've heard today is Takaro is Indigenous joy. Takaro can also be Indigenous resistance. It is rongoā, it is laughter, it is whānau, it is medicine in that context. It is intergenerational, it is storytelling, it is, I love the kind of concept around thinking about gender and what is and isn't binary. So Takaro is beyond the binary. And is also about unlocking those kurahune, like what are those hidden messages that you learn about yourself when you go out there and do the thing and ask for permission afterwards, you know, live into your Māori-tanga. Yeah, so maybe one last thing from both of you. It doesn't have to be profound. You guys have already offered enough to this hour. And then I'll close us off with a couple of messages and a bit of a mihi to you both. Hospital pass, hospital pass. What's one thing you want them to take away from your kōrero?
I think the main one that I have is that Takaro is learning and Takaro is exploring. And just going back to like the berry concept, that there are so many different avenues for our tamariki to explore and play in and add to their kete, that anyone can now survive and thrive in the right circumstances with the right support. And that's something I think from what I've taken away is that what we're trying to do and hand over to our communities that we're working with. And I just want to quickly acknowledge there was a comment, question pātai, just around how we can try and get this out into the wider communities. And I think that is something that we do need to keep addressing and bringing to our whānau and our smaller communities who aren't in our main areas. And that is something that, well, as an organisation, we are trying to explore still, and find more partnerships and ways to do that. And so that is just something that is still on the forefront of our brain and on our radar, that we are trying to get out and explore that with everyone, because there is so much safety and so much joy, within these types of tākaro, and to reconnect to our tuakiritanga as Māori, and as our, like, even though we're a bit haitaki, as Wiremu said, that's like us, and let's go and let's take it to everyone.
Own it, lean in. Ka pai. Wiremu Actually, there's a cool pātai in there that maybe you could, I don't know, abridge a bit of a kōrero in there. What is your advice or starting tips for me to create a bridge for our tamariki to connect into that space? Did you see that pātai? That would thrive in this space, but cannot
Natasha.
access it. If not, Kate Pai, hit us with your soundbite, and I'll send a message.
Oh yeah, what is my soundbite? So no, so as first of all, I'm a big fan of Natasha, and literally your kōrero there about just letting them lean into it. It's like that's how we find out. And aroha mai ke te kakanga au anō, fuck around and find out. You know, like
hey,
it's literally like not the most inspiring thing to say, but like if I didn't play basketball, then like I wouldn't realize that I'm not a fan of it. And in fact, I'm more of a cheerleader at basketball games, you know, so the people on the side of the courts, you know, that's when I discovered I love, because here in Dunedin, we have otago dances. And so like in that world of kind of like, where is your lane? Gosh, it's probably multiple. But like I wouldn't have known that if I just kind of like hid in a corner. And as you know, as they say in Dirty Dancing, nobody puts baby in a corner. And so like it's all about just getting on the dance floor and finding out how you move, because otherwise you're just going to be cutting boxes in the corner over there. So like effectively, I believe the statement, if you're not pissing someone off, you're doing something wrong. And so my intention isn't to tick anyone off, but it is to kind of like have people tilt their heads. And I don't think it's polarizing in any way, but it's more along the lines of this is what I'm up to. And if you respond to it, if you vibe with it, then no mai tauti mai. And allowing for that to be kai for those that come after us is all I'm trying to do, basically, is that letting them know that this stage is available, because they're so saturated with a majority stage. And I guess because we are on the fringes, because we are trivial, I guess it is polarizing naturally. But I don't think being polarizing is anything to fear, but I think it's to be encouraged. Because at the end of the day, if we're all dancing the same dance, would there be like break dancing alongside tango? You know, otherwise we'd all be doing the tango. So let our tamariki sing their songs, let them dance their dances, so that way that their people can hear the sounds of it and come towards it.
Me haro rawa te kōrero korua. Kei aku tino hoa tēnei mātou e tuku ana i ngā mihi maioha kia kōrua, me mihi ka tika ki te ihi, te wehi, te wairua Māori o te wānanga nei o te rā, ki tō kōrua ngākau nui ki te kaupapa. Kaore e kore kua whai hua tātou katoa i ngā kura hina o roto i a kōrua kōrero. Hei taonga tuku iho, he puna mātou ranga, nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Mauri ora kia tātou, nui te aroha kia kōrua.
Wā, mauri tō.
Hello!
Hey! Rawe.